You really think you'll manage a cruise at your age? Adam didn't even look up from his phone as he said it. Cruises are for the young, Mom, for people who dance, drink, explore. You'd hate it. That was the moment I knew I'd go, no matter what. We were sitting in the small kitchen of my house, the one Adam was born in, when he dropped that line like it was helpful advice, not a dismissal. I'd shown him the printout from the travel agency, bright photos of the ship's deck, the islands it would stop at. A small dream, finally, within reach. I already paid the deposit, I said quietly, folding the paper again. My voice was calm, as always. I've never been one to scream. Adam chuckled. Then get a refund. Or better, let me take it off your hands. We've been wanting to take the kids on something like that. It'd be great family time. He meant his family, of course. Not me. I was just the tired widow with thinning hair and arthritis in her fingers. The one who watched their dog when they went to Tahoe. The one who loaned money just for a month 2 years ago. I booked a balcony suite, I added. I don't know why I said it. Maybe I wanted him to hear that I had done something for myself, something not small. He whistled. That's a hell of an upgrade. You really want to blow all that money on yourself? No. I wanted to save it for the next emergency. For another roof repair I wouldn't ask him to help with. For some hypothetical grandchild's graduation gift. But yes, I wanted that balcony. I wanted ocean air. I wanted to lie in bed and feel like my life wasn't shrinking every year. He leaned across the table, put his hand on mine. It wasn't affection. It was the press of persuasion. Mom, be smart. You'll get seasick. You hate crowds. And the noise? The music? You won't sleep a minute. Let me call the agency. Switch the name to mine. I'll pay you back. I said nothing. I just watched his hand on mine. Clean nails, wedding band, strong fingers. My son. 2 weeks later, we were at the port. He carried 3 suitcases, barked at his youngest not to drop the passports, and spoke to me only once, to remind me to stay close to the family check-in line. His wife, Brianna, didn't even pretend to hide her annoyance. We could have gotten another deluxe cabin, she muttered, if your mother hadn't insisted on coming. I didn't reply. I just showed my ID, my ticket. The clerk smiled politely, typed something, then frowned slightly at the screen. There's been a change, she said. Cabin 9127, deluxe with balcony. Is that correct? I nodded. Brianna blinked. Wait, isn't that? Yeah, that's the upgrade, Adam said slowly, confused. But I thought. He turned to me. Didn't we say you'd take the economy cabin? So we could all stay together? I looked at him then. Really looked. No, Adam, I said gently. You said that. And I walked onto the ship. Alone. The hallway to the lower deck smelled faintly of bleach and something metallic. Pipes ran along the ceiling, humming softly. I passed rows of identical white doors, each with a small silver number and a tiny window that didn't open. Cabin 2209 was technically mine, at least according to the updated family plan. A narrow bed, no balcony, and a ceiling fan that creaked when it moved. It reminded me of a hospital room, or a storage closet someone had kindly put a pillow in. I stood in the doorway for a moment, not stepping inside. Behind me, Adam's voice echoed down the corridor. She'll be fine, he was saying to Brianna. It's just for sleeping. Brianna's reply was a whisper, but the tone was unmistakable. Annoyance masked as concern. I don't want her complaining the whole time. The last thing I need is drama on vacation. I smiled to myself and stepped in. It was exactly what I'd expected. One outlet, one chair, one pillow. They'd already brought my luggage down. A single navy blue suitcase with scuffed wheels and a tag from 2012. I sat on the bed and felt the springs creak beneath me. That's when I pulled the envelope from my purse. 10 days before the cruise, after Adam had graciously accepted my offer to switch cabins, I'd called the travel agency, asked some quiet questions, paid a change fee, transferred the deluxe suite into my name again, this time sealed with a note on the file. Do not transfer without written authorization. Then I'd said nothing. At dinner, I joined them in the buffet lounge. Brianna picked at a salad, and Adam devoured prime rib while scrolling through his phone. The children squabbled over desserts. No one asked how my room was. No one offered to help me find it. Tomorrow we dock at Grand Cayman, Adam said, not looking up. There's a stingray thing at 10:30. You probably won't want to come. I'll make my own plans, I replied. He nodded absently, already moving on to the next topic. A snorkel rental, a massage slot Brianna had to reschedule. The kids wanted jet skis. I was wallpaper again, polite, gray, fading into the edges. That night, I walked the deck alone. The stars above were clearer than I remembered, so close they looked like they might fall into the sea. The wind lifted my scarf, and I tightened it around my neck. From where I stood, I could see the lights of the upper suites, their balconies, their wide sliding doors. Mine was waiting for me. I took the elevator to the 9th floor, walked past the polished wood paneling, and let myself into 9127. Clean linens, a king-size bed, 2 chairs facing the ocean. A welcome bottle of wine sat on the counter. I poured a glass and stepped onto the balcony, letting the warm breeze wash over me. Below, somewhere under layers of steel and strangers' feet, my son slept in a room meant for me. And above, in the silence, I sipped my wine and listened to the waves. Let them wonder tomorrow. Let them figure it out. I woke to the sound of seagulls and a faint knock on the door. Room service. I hadn't ordered anything, but the young man smiled brightly, wheeled in a tray, and gestured toward the table. Courtesy of the captain, ma'am. Guests in the deluxe cabins get complimentary breakfast on shore days. A silver pot of coffee, warm croissants, mango slices. I hadn't eaten breakfast in bed since, maybe ever. I sat down slowly, poured a cup, and stared out through the glass doors at the pier in Grand Cayman. Passengers were already disembarking below, hats, backpacks, sandals slapping the ramp. I saw them then. Adam, Brianna, the boys, standing in line at the excursion desk. Brianna's mouth was moving fast, her arm gesturing toward something. Adam was frowning, holding up a phone, probably wondering why the Stingray tour hadn't gone through. I'd canceled it yesterday, quietly, efficiently. The refund went to my onboard account. I watched as they argued with the clerk for a few moments. Then the kids started whining. A perfect morning, really. After breakfast, I dressed in white linen, packed a small purse, and took the side exit down to the tender boat. No one noticed me. No one ever does when you're old and silent. The island air was humid, sweet with fruit and sunblock. I walked the main street, found a tiny cafe with plastic chairs and a chalkboard menu. A young woman brought me fresh coconut juice, and I sipped it slowly, watching the ocean. "Traveling with family?" she asked kindly. "No," I said, "just passing through." She smiled like she understood. I liked her for that. Back on board a few hours later, I passed by the gym where Adam was wiping sweat from his forehead, alone. Brianna was probably at the spa. The boys were at the arcade, everyone fragmented, everyone mildly irritated. No one noticed me pass by. I returned to my cabin, my sanctuary, and showered. The towels here were thick. The mirror didn't fog. The closet light came on automatically. At 6 p.m., the ship pulled away from the island. I stood on my balcony, glass of wine in hand, and watched Grand Cayman shrink into a blur of lights and palm trees. Someone knocked on my door again. A steward with a clipboard. "Mrs. Davenport?" he asked. "We have a note on file. You declined the family dinner reservation tonight, is that correct?" "That's right." "Would you like a private table in the captain's lounge instead?" I nodded. "That would be lovely." At dinner, I sat by a window and ordered grilled sea bass with lemon butter. The pianist played something soft and old, and for a moment I forgot where I was. I could have been anywhere. Florence, Marseille, that quiet place we never made it to, my husband and I. Halfway through dessert, I spotted Adam entering the main dining hall across the lounge. He looked tired, shirt creased, hair slightly damp at the temples. Brianna trailed behind him, speaking sharply. One boy was sulking, the other dragging his feet. Adam paused, glanced around. For a second his eyes moved past me, then returned. Recognition flickered. He started toward me, hand half raised. I lifted my fork, took a slow bite of tiramisu, and looked away. Let him think. Let him feel that distance for once. The next morning, I didn't go down to the breakfast buffet. I brewed the in-room coffee, opened the balcony door, and sat wrapped in a shawl, while the sky turned from soft gray to honey gold. My joints ached from the breeze, but it was the good kind of ache, the kind that reminded you were still alive. Around 8:30, I spotted Adam on the upper deck walkway. He was alone, wearing his cruise dad t-shirt, pacing with a cup of something, searching. He passed once, twice. On the third pass, he stopped and looked toward the cabins. I wondered if he'd figured it out yet, that I hadn't given up the suite after all, that I was no longer where he'd placed me. Down below, the public pool was already full of children squealing and splashing. I hadn't set foot near it once. Instead, I changed into a light blue blouse and comfortable slacks, added my sun hat, the one Adam once told me looked too dramatic, and headed to the 11th deck. There, in a quiet lounge that smelled faintly of citrus and polish, they were holding a watercolor class. I hadn't painted in years, but I remembered the feel of a wet brush in my hand, the way the colors bled into each other, unbothered by lines. The instructor, a young woman with short hair and a French accent, welcomed me with a warm nod. "Just paint what you feel," she said. "What speaks to you?" I painted the sea. Not the blue brochure kind, but the real thing. Layered, restless, unpredictable. When I was done, it looked nothing like the sea from the deck, but it looked exactly like how I felt. When I returned to my cabin, I found a note slid under the door. "Mom, can we talk? Something's weird. We're all the way down on deck 2 and the vent buzzes all night. Did the agency mess up the reservations? Call me when you see this. A." I didn't call. Instead, I took a nap. A real nap, the kind you sink into, not the kind you take while someone's toddler kicks your shin under the table. In the afternoon, I went to the upper promenade, bought a single scoop of lemon sorbet, and sat near the rail. That's where I saw Brianna. She was talking to the concierge, firmly, tightly, with that polite irritation she wore like perfume. Her tone said something wasn't going right. Her eyes darted around, likely looking for me. I sat quietly on my bench, watching the waves. They had the kids, the budget cabin, the heat, and the chaos. I had my sorbet, my silence, and the sea. At dinner, I skipped the captain's lounge and went to the small bistro tucked near the spa. Ordered vegetable risotto, a glass of chilled white, and brought a book with me, an old mystery I'd read at least 10 times. It always felt like home. Midway through the meal, a shadow fell across my table. I looked up. It was Ethan, my older grandson. 16, lanky, too tall for his clothes. He looked unsure, one hand curled into his pocket. "Hi, Grandma," he said. Dad's looking for you." I took a sip of wine. "Is he?" "Yeah, he's kinda freaking out." "About?" "Well, he thinks maybe the agency switched the bookings, like they were supposed to get the balcony cabin, and now it's—" He glanced around. "Yours." I met his eyes, and in that moment I saw it. The flicker of realization. The hint of a smirk he tried to hide. He knew. I raised my glass slightly. "Enjoy your cabin, Ethan." He blinked, then grinned. "Honestly?" "It sucks down there." I smiled too. "Sleep tight," I said. By the 5th day, the rhythm of the ship was as familiar to me as the ticking of my old kitchen clock back home. Morning sun, deck walks, fresh towels, a quiet breakfast on the balcony, always with coffee and the small satisfaction of silence. I hadn't spoken to Adam since before the cruise began. He had tried, left 2 more notes, one slipped under my door, another handed to a steward who seemed embarrassed delivering it. The second one was more direct. "Mom, I'm not sure what's going on, but this is getting kind of awkward. We need to sort this out. Please." I folded it neatly and slid it into the drawer next to the Bible. Let him sit with the awkward. That afternoon, while the ship idled at sea, I took a book and went to the adults-only pool. It was nearly empty. A few couples reading, a man snoring softly under a towel. I chose a lounger near the edge and settled in, letting the sun warm my legs. It wasn't until an hour later that I spotted Adam. He was near the buffet window, wearing a baseball cap now, one I hadn't seen before, maybe trying not to be recognized. He looked tired. Not cruise tired, but something deeper. His gait had lost that confident stride. He hovered for a moment, glanced toward the loungers. His eyes passed over me once, just once, but didn't land. I saw Brianna shortly after. She was dragging one of the boys by the arm. The child's face was flushed and damp, his fists clenched. She snapped something at him, then turned and stormed back inside. Adam followed, resigned. I closed my book and took a long sip of ice water. They weren't having a good time. Not really. Later that day, I visited the onboard art gallery. Not because I planned to buy anything. I wasn't looking to hang a seascape over the sofa, but because it was quiet, air-conditioned, and full of light. One painting stopped me. A wide, abstract canvas of pale golds and deep indigos. Not a sea, not exactly, but something open, something infinite. A young woman approached me, smiling. "You have excellent taste," she said. "That's one of our premier pieces." "It reminds me of my husband," I said, without knowing why. She tilted her head. "How so?" "He always said if he could come back as anything, it'd be the sea. Wild and never still. Always somewhere else." We talked for a few minutes. She had kind eyes, didn't speak down to me. I liked that. When I returned to my cabin, there was another note. This time tucked into the doorframe, folded in half. "Mom, can we at least talk? I feel like something's going on here. I just want to understand. Please. I'll come wherever you want. Love, Adam." Love, a word so easy to write, so rarely backed by action. I stared at it a long time, then set it on the table next to the little bowl of apples room service kept replacing, no matter how many I didn't eat. I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto the balcony. Below, I could see them again. My family. At the tiny pool near the kids' area. Adam was half-heartedly trying to coax the younger boy into the water. Brianna scrolled her phone, sunglasses perched like a crown. They looked like every other family I'd ever seen. Sunburned, frazzled, pretending this was fun. I stood there quietly, above them, glass in hand. Once, I would have felt guilty. Now, I only felt tall. On the 6th day, the ship docked at Cozumel. The announcement came through the intercom around 7 a.m., cheerful and unnecessary. I was already awake, brushing my hair in the mirror, watching the old woman in the reflection move with deliberate care. I chose a wide-brimmed straw hat, the one I used to wear to the farmer's market back home. It gave me shade and something like a barrier. Today, I needed both. The deck buzzed with early risers, all eager to flee the ship and take selfies on foreign sand. Families clutched towels and oversized bags, sunscreen streaked across children's noses. I kept to the side, waiting until the first wave thinned out. Then I stepped ashore. Cozumel smelled like mangoes and gasoline. The sky was white-hot, and the streets pulsed with the life of people who weren't on vacation. I ignored the kiosks selling bracelets and tequila samples and walked 3 blocks to a quiet cafe shaded by bougainvillea. I ordered black coffee and a slice of something the waiter called pain d'élote, sweet corn cake. It was warm, crumbling, just enough. A couple sat nearby, older, maybe in their 80s. They spoke in soft Spanish, holding hands across the table. They reminded me of what might have been. "Traveling together?" I asked gently when the moment allowed. The woman smiled. "Anniversary. How many years?" 59, she said, then with a chuckle. "And one storm." I laughed. It had been a while since I'd laughed out loud. We talked for half an hour. I didn't tell them about Adam. I didn't need to. Not every story needs to be repeated. Some are better when they remain a silent truth inside your chest. Back on the ship, near the boarding ramp, I caught sight of my family. Adam's shirt clung to him, sweat-streaked. The kids were bickering, dragging souvenir bags, while Brianna lectured them about hydration. They didn't see me. I turned and walked the long way around, through the spa deck, past the piano lounge, up to my suite where cool air and lemon water waited. I peeled off my hat, slipped off my shoes, and lay down on the freshly made bed. The ceiling fan hummed above, its rhythm gentle, hypnotic. When I woke later, there was a card on my nightstand, handwritten, neat block letters. "Grandma, it's Ethan. I know what you did. I think it's kind of awesome. Don't worry, I won't tell Dad. Also, your balcony is sick. Can I come see it sometime?" I grinned. Of all of them, Ethan had the best chance of turning out different. He saw things, paid attention. Maybe because he was the quiet one. Maybe because he hadn't yet learned how to overlook what was inconvenient. I wrote a reply on the back of a spa brochure and folded it into his sneaker at the cabin door. "You can come tomorrow. Tell no one. Bring cookies." That evening, I dined in the quiet Italian place at the rear of the ship. The hostess greeted me like I was someone important, someone expected. She remembered my name, asked if I wanted my usual table. The view overlooked the wake, that endless white churning ribbon the ship left behind as it pushed forward into dusk. I sipped wine and ate gnocchi in silence. Across the room, a woman about my age sat with her daughter and granddaughter. 3 generations. Laughing, talking over each other, passing bread. It didn't sting. Not exactly. More like a distant echo of something I once knew. Back in my cabin, I turned down the bed, took a hot shower, and opened the sliding doors to let the ocean in. The night smelled like salt and distance. Adam hadn't left a note today. Maybe he was starting to understand. Or maybe he'd given up. Either way, I wasn't waiting. I slipped between crisp sheets, let the wind cool my skin, and slept with the sound of the waves for company. Dinner was the last time I saw all of them together. The ship was hosting a family fiesta night on the main deck. Music, banners, tacos served in baskets, margaritas in plastic cups. I nearly skipped it. Too much noise, too many faces. But curiosity pulled me from my cabin. I kept to the shadows near the railing, a safe perch from which to observe. There they were. Adam, Brianna, the boys, all sitting at one of the long tables, pressed between strangers. Brianna was trying to wipe salsa from the youngest's shirt. Adam looked like a man clinging to the memory of silence. Their table was under a string of lights that flickered in the breeze. It should have been festive. It looked like a birthday party no one wanted to attend. They weren't talking, not really. Just managing. I watched as Brianna got up abruptly and walked toward the bar. Adam said something to her back, but she didn't turn around. One of the boys kicked the other under the table. I sipped my drink and looked away. Across the deck, a line formed for the conga. A band played something loud and bright. An elderly man in a floral shirt danced with a woman who might have been his daughter. They laughed, really laughed, the kind that lifts your shoulders. And in that moment, I realized what I'd taken from Adam. Not the sweet, not the wine or the excursions, not even the comfort. What I'd taken was control. For the first time in years, I wasn't bending to make space. I wasn't adjusting, folding, softening so others could spread out. I had held my line, and Adam, my strong, capable, always in charge son, had no idea how to handle it. I went back to my cabin early. I didn't need to see the rest. I'd seen enough over the years to know how the night would end. The kids oversugared and overtired. Brianna stiff with resentment. Adam pacing the hallway with his phone, blaming everyone but himself. Back in 9127, a chocolate square waited on my pillow. I sat on the bed, kicked off my shoes, and let my mind drift to another kind of party. A small birthday dinner years ago. Adam had been 12. I'd made spaghetti and hung paper streamers. He told me I was the best mom in the world and asked if we could have cake for breakfast. I'd said yes. That boy had once loved me without condition. Where had he gone? A soft knock pulled me from the memory. I opened the door just enough to see Ethan's grin. "Hey, Grandma," he whispered, holding up a napkin-wrapped parcel. "Cookies." I stepped aside, letting him in. He walked straight to the balcony and stood looking out. "You can really see everything from up here," he said. "It's quiet." I handed him a glass of juice, and we sat outside together. Just the two of us, the wind curling around our ankles, the ship cutting clean through the dark. Ethan broke a cookie in half, gave me a piece. "I think Dad's losing it," he said after a while. "Oh?" "Yeah. He keeps saying something's off. Like the cruise isn't going how he thought?" I nodded. "Maybe it isn't." He looked at me carefully. "Did you do it on purpose?" I met his eyes. "I did what I had to do." He nodded slowly. "That's kinda cool." We didn't say much after that. We just watched the sea, both of us pretending we weren't related to anyone else on board. When he left, he turned in the doorway. I hope I'm like you when I'm old, he said. I smiled. Be better. And I closed the door. The 8th morning brought a gentle rocking that most passengers probably didn't notice. But I did. My bones always knew the weather before the sky did. I stayed in bed longer than usual, tucked beneath the linen sheets, the balcony door cracked open just enough to let the ocean speak. It was overcast. The sun dulled behind clouds that moved like slow breath. No excursions today, just a full day at sea. The kind of day that forces people to talk, or to avoid each other altogether. Around noon, I wandered to the library on deck 6. It was nearly empty, just a few solitary souls leafing through mystery novels and travel guides. I picked a worn paperback from the shelf. Something old, British. A woman solving a crime by noticing all the little things no one else bothered to see. My kind of story. I settled into a leather chair by the window and let myself disappear. 2 chapters in, I heard the voices. Adam, we can't keep doing this. I'm exhausted. Brianna. They were just outside the library doors, not quite whispering. The kind of loud tension people carry when they no longer care who hears. It's not like I planned for this, Adam hissed back. She changed the reservation behind my back. And what did you expect her to do? Smile from below deck while we lounge on her balcony? There was silence for a beat. Then Brianna, again, sharper now. She's not as clueless as you think. I set the book down on my lap, heart calm, breath steady. There it was, the first crack. I waited until their footsteps faded before I stood and returned the book to the shelf. Nothing more to read today. The best chapter had just happened live. Back in my cabin, a small envelope waited by the door. It was handwritten in Brianna's sharp script. Leslie, I don't agree with how Adam handled things. I thought you should know that. I didn't ask him to take your cabin, and I didn't know the full story until recently. I also don't think it's fair for the boys to suffer because of a mess we created. If you'd like to have dinner with us tonight, just for one evening, I'd welcome it. We can sit separately if you prefer. B. It wasn't an apology, not really. But it was more than I'd expected from her. I sat with the note for a while. Part of me, the part that still remembers Christmas mornings and scraped knees and sticky handprints on the fridge, wanted to say yes. But the stronger part, the part that had been dismissed, ignored, labeled inconvenient, knew better. You don't get to undo years of erosion with one civil sentence. You don't get access just because I'm suddenly useful again. That evening, I dressed carefully anyway. Soft trousers, pale blouse, the pearl earrings I hadn't worn since Derek's funeral. I looked like a woman someone might want to be seated next to. And I went to dinner. But not with them. I requested a table by the window in the quiet lounge. Ordered grilled scallops and a glass of crisp white wine. As I waited, the maitre d' passed by. Dining alone again, Mrs. Davenport? Yes, I said, happily. Halfway through my meal, I spotted them. Adam, Brianna, the boys, seated at a round table not far away. The boys were bickering. Brianna was staring off into space. Adam's shoulders were tight, like he was bracing for a wave that never came. He looked over. Our eyes met. I raised my glass, just slightly. Not as an olive branch, as a mirror. Ethan knocked just after 10 the next morning, holding 2 chocolate croissants wrapped in a napkin. I had to smuggle them out, he whispered, like we were planning a heist. Dad thinks I went to the game room. I opened the balcony door wider. Then hurry, before you're caught fraternizing with the enemy. He grinned and stepped inside, already at home in the space. I poured juice into 2 glasses while he sat cross-legged on the lounge chair, biting into the croissant like it was sacred. "This is the life," he said, mouth full. "Downstairs, it's chaos." "Oh?" "Dad's stressing about the final port. He missed the reservation for the glass-bottom boat thing. Mom's furious. Says he forgets everything unless it involves himself." I arched an eyebrow. "She said that?" "Yelled it. Loud enough for the neighbors to get front row seats." I sipped my coffee slowly. He looked out over the water, thoughtful. "It's weird, you know, being stuck on a boat with people and realizing how little you actually talk to them. Or how little they listen when you do," I added. He nodded, quiet. I liked that about Ethan. He didn't fill space with noise. He let silence settle and respected its weight. We sat for a while, eating slowly, watching the blue world slip by. Then he turned to me. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "You just did." "Okay, smart," he smirked. "But seriously, did you do this, take the cabin because you wanted to prove a point? Or just because you were tired of giving in?" I studied him. There was no malice in the question, only curiosity. "Does it have to be one or the other?" I asked. "Can it be both?" He looked away, then back. "I think you're the only person on this ship who seems like they're actually enjoying the cruise." That gave me pause. Maybe I was. Not in the traditional way. I wasn't sliding down pool slides or dancing at trivia night, but I was breathing, resting, thinking, watching the ocean move and not needing to perform for anyone. I was me, for the first time in a long time. Ethan stood, dusted crumbs from his lap. "They're doing karaoke tonight. Want to come?" I laughed. "Only if I can sing something inappropriate." He grinned. "You'll be the star." When he left, I stayed on the balcony, letting the breeze touch my face like an old friend. A few hours later, there was a knock at the door. Not Ethan. It was Adam. He looked older than he had a week ago. Or maybe I just finally saw it. The worry lines, the forced composure, the hesitation. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, saying nothing. He stood by the little table, looking at the untouched apples, the folded notes. Then he turned to me. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" "That you changed the reservation. That you kept the suite." I folded my arms. "Would you have let me?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "That's what I thought," I said. "Mom," he started, "I didn't mean for it to be like this. I just thought that you'd take what you wanted," I interrupted. "And I'd do what I always do. Smile. Step aside. Make it easier for you." He flinched. "I didn't mean it that way," he said quietly. "But it's what you did." The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was tired. Old. He looked down at his hands. "I guess I just didn't expect you to push back." I met his eyes. "That's the problem, Adam. You didn't expect me to matter." He sat slowly, like someone unsure if the chair would hold. "I'm sorry," he said. "It wasn't dramatic. No tears, no big gestures. But it was something." I nodded. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "But I didn't do this to teach you a lesson. I did it because I was tired of learning the same one over and over." He stayed a few minutes more. We didn't talk about it again. And when he left, he closed the door gently, like someone finally realizing it wasn't theirs to walk through without knocking. The sea was restless that night. Not stormy, just alive. Rolling in deep swells that made the ship tilt slightly from side to side. The kind of motion that unsettled children and revealed who packed the Dramamine. I loved it. I sat out on the balcony, wrapped in a shawl, sipping chamomile tea while the deck lights flickered against the darkness. Somewhere below, I could hear a band playing. Faint trumpet, clapping, voices singing off-key. Karaoke night. Ethan had invited me, and I'd promised I'd think about it. But when I stepped into my shoes and reached for the door, something pulled me back. Maybe it was the wind. Or maybe it was knowing that I didn't have to go anywhere just to prove I was still part of something. I was already enough, right where I was. Still, I wandered up to Deck 7 after a while, more out of curiosity than commitment. The lounge was full. Families crowding tables, cocktails in hand, phones raised to record. A spotlight lit up a little girl singing "Let It Go" with all the sincerity of a Broadway star. Her mother clapped wildly. Her father filmed with quiet pride. At a corner table, I spotted Ethan, slouched low with a root beer in hand, his foot tapping to the beat. He saw me, smiled, and raised his cup in a quiet salute. I nodded back, then turned and left without a word. No need for scenes. No need for a moment. We'd had ours already. Back on the upper deck, the sky was endless and indifferent. I stood by the rail, letting the sea wind press against my face until my eyes watered. Behind me, I heard voices. Not just any voices. Adam and Brianna. I moved to a shadowed alcove, not hiding, but not presenting myself either. Their conversation was tired, ragged around the edges. "I don't know what she wants from me," Adam said. "She doesn't want anything," Brianna replied. "That's the problem. You're used to her giving and giving." She stopped. "Now you don't know what to do." I apologized. She didn't need an apology. She needed you to see her. Silence. "You're her son, Adam," Brianna continued. "Not her landlord, not her supervisor, just her son." His voice cracked then, low. "I thought I was taking care of her." "You were taking control of her," she corrected. Brianna had surprised me lately. Beneath her crisp shirts and clipped tones, she had more insight than I'd given her credit for. I waited until they moved on before I stepped out of the alcove and made my way back to my cabin. I passed a young couple kissing by the elevator, a woman in her 70s doing a crossword on a bench, a steward whistling as he polished the rail. Life, moving forward. Inside 9127, I poured a glass of water and sat on the edge of the bed. The sea had steadied some. My knees ached, and my shoulders protested from the day's walk on deck. But I felt more grounded than I had in years. I thought of Derek, of the promises we'd whispered in the dark, the arguments over money, the quiet contentment of 2 mugs of tea on the porch. He would have laughed at all this. "Let them sleep below deck," he would have said, handing me a biscuit. "You earned the stars." I smiled into the dark. He was right. I had earned this, not just the room or the sea view or the folded napkins and daily fresh fruit. I had earned the peace, and maybe, just maybe, I'd taught someone else how to earn theirs. It was laundry day. Even aboard a luxury cruise ship, clothes still needed washing, and not everyone trusted the full-service cleaning that cost as much as a decent dinner. The self-serve laundry room was tucked into a quiet corner of Deck 4, down a narrow hallway that always smelled faintly of detergent and salt. I liked it down there. No music, no chatter, no events. Just hums and buzzes and the pleasant rhythm of folding warm clothes. I arrived early, before the rush. 2 washers, 1 dryer, and a stack of neatly folded towels waiting to be stolen by the next forgetful husband. As I loaded my modest basket, a few blouses, underthings, 1 pair of slacks, I heard footsteps behind me. Brianna. She didn't see me at first. She had a big canvas bag slung over one shoulder, clearly frustrated. She walked in like someone looking for a fight, but not sure who to start with. "Of course all the machines are taken," she muttered under her breath. I looked up. "Not quite." She blinked, startled, then straightened. "Oh. Hello." We hadn't spoken since the note she left days ago. I gave her a polite nod, not warm, but not cold. She glanced at the machine I was using, then at the others. All in motion. "Any idea when these will be free?" she asked. I checked the timer. 30 minutes or so. She sighed, set her bag on the floor, and leaned against the wall. "I didn't expect to be doing laundry on this cruise," she said, more to herself than to me. "But one of the boys spilled fruit punch all over the clothes we planned to wear to the captain's dinner." "I hear that's a rite of passage," I said dryly. She chuckled. "Just once." A pause followed, heavy with all the things neither of us wanted to say. "I meant what I wrote in the note," she said finally. "I don't think it was fair how Adam handled things." I folded a hand towel. "It wasn't just Adam." She nodded quietly. "No, it wasn't." Another pause. I let myself believe your generosity was endless," she continued. "It became background noise, like the lights that are just always on." I said nothing. "I know that doesn't excuse anything." "No," I said, "but it names it." She looked down at her shoes. "I'm not proud of it," she admitted. "That makes two of us," I replied softly. Her eyes flicked up. "I didn't realize how much space you'd always made for us, for Adam, for the kids. It's easy to overlook what someone holds up until they stop holding it." I finished folding, closed my basket. She stepped aside to let me pass. "Brianna," I said at the door, "next time someone offers you something freely, don't assume they owe it to you." "I won't," she said, and I believed her. Back in my cabin, I unpacked the warm clothes into the closet. Each fold, each hanger, each neat little corner, a reclaiming of space, of self. Later that evening, the captain's dinner began. Formal wear, white linens, crystal glasses. The kind of affair I used to think I had no place in. But I went. I wore a black dress I hadn't put on in 10 years, simple and unadorned. I did my hair. I put on lipstick. Not for anyone else, for me. They were already seated when I entered. Adam, Brianna, the boys. They saw me. Adam stood, uncertain. Ethan smiled. Brianna gave a small nod. I didn't join them. I sat at another table, next to a retired librarian from Oregon who told wonderful stories and didn't ask me to be anything but present. And when the waiter came with the champagne, I raised my glass not to reconciliation, but to release. On the 12th day, the ship felt smaller, maybe because the end was near. Tomorrow, we'd dock. Suitcases would roll down long hallways. People would fumble for passports and take one last selfie in front of the sea. The spell of vacation would break, and life, real, complicated life, would come back in through the cracks. But today still belonged to the ocean. I spent the morning walking, not to get anywhere, just to feel the floor gently sway beneath me. I paused at railings, watched the foam unfurl behind the ship, nodded to a few familiar faces. We'd become a kind of soft community, quiet strangers tied together by buffet lines, elevator buttons, and the ritual of morning coffee. By midday, I found myself in the atrium where they were setting up for a final group photo. Passengers and crew together. A tradition, they said. Something to remember. I stayed back. I'd remember plenty without a photo. As I turned to leave, I saw Adam across the room. He was helping one of the boys adjust a collar, smoothing down the child's hair with absent strokes. Ethan stood beside them, arms crossed, looking mildly amused by it all. Adam looked up and saw me. This time he didn't look away. He raised his hand in a small wave. Just that. And I nodded. No need for more. Sometimes distance is not punishment. It's a form of truth. I returned to my cabin and began to pack. Slowly, carefully, folding each blouse like it mattered. As I placed my book into the suitcase, I noticed something tucked underneath. A folded piece of cruise stationery. I opened it. Dear Grandma, thanks for letting me hang out in your room. It's the best part of this whole trip. Also, I think Dad's actually learning something. Not everything, but you shook him up. That's probably good. If I ever forget how to treat people, I hope someone shakes me up too. Love, Ethan. I smiled, folded the note, and slid it into the inside pocket of my purse. Some things you carry home. Some things you carry forever. That night, the last dinner was held in the ship's garden lounge, a glass-walled room filled with hanging plants, fairy lights, and the low hum of farewell. I didn't sit with my family, but they were there. I saw Adam pull out Brianna's chair, whisper something that made her smirk. I saw Ethan nudge his little brother, handing him a bread roll without being asked. I saw a tired kind of calm settle over them. They would go back to their lives, and I would return to mine. Except something would be different now. Not louder, not bolder, just firmer. After dessert, a bittersweet chocolate tart, I stepped out onto the upper deck one last time. The stars were out in full, the air warm, the sea endlessly black. I stood at the railing and let the wind hit my face, sharp and honest. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone. No call, no invitation, no apology. I was already exactly where I was supposed to be. Disembarkation always felt like the world waking up too fast. By 6 a.m., there were lines at the elevators, suitcases stacked like barricades in every hallway, and passengers pacing with coffees clutched like lifelines. The illusion of escape unraveled quickly. Schedules returned, tempers surfaced. Vacation was over. I stayed in my cabin longer than most. I'd requested a later departure slot. There was no one waiting for me at the terminal, no rush to catch a flight. I had time. After all these years, I'd earned a little extra time. I zipped my suitcase, checked the drawers once more, then sat down on the edge of the bed. My reflection in the sliding door looked like someone I almost recognized. Tired, yes, but also taller, straighter. Like something inside had settled into place. There was a soft knock. I opened the door to find Ethan again, out of breath, holding a to-go cup and a paper bag. "Thought you might not have had breakfast," he said. I took the bag and peeked inside. A still warm muffin and a single napkin with a doodle of a boat on it. "Masterpiece," I said. He grinned. "Going home today," he said, a little wistful. "Feels like we just got here." He nodded, then hesitated. "Do you think, will things go back to normal now?" I took a long sip from the coffee. It was bitter. Perfect. "No, Ethan," I said. "Not back, just forward." He seemed to think about that. Then he hugged me. Not the awkward one-armed kind teenagers give when reminded to. A real hug. Tight, without hurry. "Thanks for the cookies," I whispered. "Thanks for the rebellion," he replied. I watched him disappear down the corridor, back to his cabin, back to his family. A boy carrying the shape of something new inside him. I waited another half hour before I left mine. The hallway was nearly empty now. Crew members nodded at me as I passed. I thanked each one, by name, where I remembered. "Safe travels, Mrs. Davenport," said the steward, who'd brought my tea that first morning. "You too," I said. At the gangway, a young man in a crisp uniform scanned my card, smiled, and gestured toward the ramp. I took one last look at the ship behind me, that floating city of small freedoms, and stepped down onto solid ground. The terminal buzzed with goodbyes, grumbling, stroller wheels, and the screech of suitcase zippers. And then I saw Adam, standing off to the side, alone, holding his phone in one hand, his face drawn but quiet. He saw me and straightened. I walked past slowly. He stepped forward. "Mom?" I turned just slightly. He didn't finish the sentence. I waited. Then softly, "You'll be okay getting home?" I held his gaze. "I've always been okay." He nodded once. The silence between us no longer cold, just clear. Behind him, Brianna gathered the boys. Ethan waved once, quickly. I returned the gesture. Then I turned, stepped through the sliding glass doors of the terminal, and walked into the sun. No one called after me. No one needed to. The ride from the terminal to my home took 43 minutes. The driver was a woman about my age with short silver curls and a sharp laugh. She didn't ask why I'd traveled alone. She didn't try to fill the silence with small talk. Just let the radio play. Low jazz, something with a brushed snare and a smoky trumpet, and kept both hands on the wheel. It suited me fine. Outside the window, the world rolled back into view. Gas stations, apartment buildings, blinking traffic lights. Real life. Imperfect, humming, indifferent. I'd left the porch light on before the cruise, just in case. It still glowed faintly under the morning sun as we pulled into the driveway. My house looked exactly the same, still in need of a fresh coat of paint, still leaning slightly to one side like an old woman refusing help. Still mine. I thanked the driver, tipped well, and rolled my suitcase up the walkway. When I stepped inside, the smell of home, dust, lavender, old wood, greeted me like an old friend. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. I unpacked slowly. Not because I was tired, though I was, but because each item held the echo of the sea. The blouse I'd worn on the balcony, the sandals that still carried a trace of sand, the earrings I'd only put on once, but felt bold doing so. When I reached the folded notes from Adam, I hesitated. I didn't throw them away, but I didn't reread them either. I slid them into a drawer near the back of the writing desk. A drawer I rarely opened. Then I sat at the kitchen table, placed both hands on the wood, and let the quiet fill me. No voices asking for rides. No appliances beeping. No questions about dinner or favors or forgotten birthdays. Just me and the faint tick of the old wall clock. Later that afternoon, I walked to the little market 3 blocks down. Bought fresh bread, butter, and a lemon. Something about that combination always made me feel like I could begin again. The cashier, a young woman with chipped purple nails, smiled. "Back from somewhere?" "Yes," I said. "Somewhere far enough." She nodded like she understood. At home, I made a sandwich, poured myself a glass of cold water, and sat on the porch. The air smelled like late summer. Warm grass, dry pavement, something faintly blooming. A neighbor passed by with a golden retriever. "Good trip, Leslie?" she called. "Very," I said. She waved, walked on. No follow-up questions, no performance. I liked that. As the sky turned amber, I took out a notepad and wrote a list. Not of chores or things to fix. Not groceries or bills. A different list. Paint the front steps. Call Ellen just to hear her laugh. Plant something that blooms wildly. Say no more often, and mean it. Wear the earrings, even to the market. Write Ethan a real letter. Take another trip, just for me. Remember, you're not invisible. I tore the page gently and pinned it to the fridge with a faded magnet shaped like a tomato. Then I made tea, took it out back, and sat under the stars. They weren't as sharp as on the ship, too much light here in the neighborhood, but they were still there, stubborn and shining. I breathed in the quiet. No curtain call, no grand applause, just presence and peace. A week passed, then two. Life slipped back into its ordinary rhythms. Morning tea, local news murmuring in the background, the creak of the mailbox lid each afternoon. But nothing felt quite the same, and I didn't want it to. That cruise wasn't a rebellion. It wasn't revenge. It was recovery. A private declaration made not with shouting, but with stillness. I am here. I have always been here. Adam called on a Thursday, not a text, a call. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Adam." A pause. We're going to Tahoe next month. Thought I'd see if you wanted to come." I smiled. Not out of joy, out of recognition, the old rhythm, the reach. "Will I have a proper bed?" I asked. "Or the couch again?" "No couch," he said quickly. "We'll book an extra room." A flicker of something, respect maybe, hid under his voice. A small admission. He was learning. "I'll think about it," I said. And I meant it. Ethan sent a postcard, a real one. On the front, a sketch of a cruise ship. On the back, still the best cabin on board. Miss you already. I placed it on the fridge next to my list. That evening, I found myself walking the neighborhood. The breeze carried the scent of someone's barbecue, and from a distant yard came the sound of a piano. Hesitant, out of tune, human. I passed a woman trimming her rose bush. She looked up and smiled. "Evening, Leslie." I nodded. "Nice night." She paused. "You look different," she said. "Maybe I am," I replied. When I got home, I opened the drawer where I'd hidden Adam's notes. I reread one, then tucked it back. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't anymore. That's what healing sounds like. Not a roar, not a scream. Just the quiet click of a drawer that no longer holds power. The cruise didn't change who I was. It reminded me that age is not erasure, that dignity is not something given, it's something claimed, that we do not stop mattering just because others stop noticing. Tomorrow, I might go online and look for another trip, not to escape, but to celebrate. Or maybe I'll stay right here and plant those wildflowers. It's enough to know I have the choice. And if you're reading this, if you've ever felt tucked away, overlooked, reduced to background noise, let me say what I wish someone had said to me sooner. You do not need permission to take up space. You do not need anyone's approval to be visible. Start with one choice. Start with one quiet no. Start with one firm yes. And when you're ready, take the damn balcony. If this story felt like yours too, share it. Save it. Leave a comment. Let someone else know they're not the only one who's finally standing tall.